So hello there, and welcome back to another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Spy Night, and in these podcasts, I like talking all things music and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'll be surprised if you haven't guessed already, I am reviewing Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. So, let's get into it, shall we? Beetlejuice Beetlejuice is, of course, the sequel to Beetlejuice, which released in 1988. And I rewatched Beetlejuice, the first Beetlejuice, which feels weird to say now, but, here I am reviewing the sequel. I rewatched the first Beetlejuice about a week ago now, and that film did not feel like it was made in 1988. I think it still holds up, and I still think it's wildly entertaining. Hence why I got a t-shirt from it, and hence why I have the Beetlejuice Funko Pop there. That's why I held it before in the intro. So yes, I am a big fan of the first Beetlejuice. Still feels weird to say. And the first Beetlejuice was directed by Tim Burton, and he returned to direct the Beetlejuice sequel, Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Can't say Beetlejuice one more time, otherwise he will appear, But anyway, yes, like I was saying before, Tim Burton comes back to direct this Beetlejuice sequel, and I was cautiously optimistic about that because Tim Burton is a very hit and miss director. He's made some solid classics, films that I will rewatch yearly, such as the first Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, which I watched the first time yesterday, and I was so taken by. Batman Returns, which I think is far better than the first Batman movie he directed. His Sweeney Todd movie, which I thought was really entertaining. Sleepy Hollow, which I think is a film which deserves far more credit than it actually gets. And Big Fish, which is one of my all-time favourite films. I love Big Fish so much, and I watch it at least once a year because of how much that film hits me. It's beautiful, Big Fish. Love it to pieces. So, those are the Tim Burton movies that I've seen that I like. And I know some people might be going, what about Nightmare Before Christmas? He didn't direct Nightmare Before Christmas. I know on the title it says Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas, but he produced the movie. It was actually directed by Henry Selick, so although Nightmare Before Christmas looks very much and feels very much like a Tim Burton movie, it actually wasn't. He didn't direct it, although he was still involved, but I think he was contracted to direct Batman Returns instead, which I think is also a very good movie. And yeah, I do like Nightmare Before Christmas a lot. I don't think of it as one of his films personally. But, Tim Burton has made some stinkers as well. He's made some very good movies, but he's made some films which are really disappointing. Like his Dumbo remake, which came out in 2019, I found incredibly disappointing. I was looking forward to that film so much. I remember the trailers being wonderful, and I remember being really excited to see it in the cinema. And I went to cinema to see it, and I remember coming out feeling utterly deflated. Just so disappointed. And his Alice in Wonderland remake was not particularly memorable. I've seen it once and I'd never plan on seeing it again. It was too weird in my opinion. His Charlie and the Chocolate Factory remake was nowhere near as good as the Gene Wilder version. His film adaptation of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children did not work for me. And I remember reading the book of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children back in secondary school, and actually really getting into the book. And I watched the movie hoping to have the same sort of experience as I had reading the book, and I didn't whatsoever. And his first Batman movie, Batman 1989, which has Jack Nicholson as a Joker, dancing to Prince whilst spraying spray paint on these paintings in an art gallery. It doesn't sound like Batman to me. I do not like Tim Burton's first Batman movie. Plus, I didn't really love what he did with the Wednesday TV show. I felt like, for me, he was phoning in his direction there. I know he's since come out and said, actually, Wednesday, made him got him back into directing, and then this film did that even more so. But I did not love the Wednesday TV show, and I did not love his direction in it. But you could still tell it was Tim Burton. Even so I'm not a big fan of those previous movies I've just mentioned, even so I actually don't like a lot of the movies I've just mentioned. A lot of them I think are stone cold stinkers. You can still tell they're Tim Burton movies, which is something I do admire about them. And especially after Wednesday, which did have this Tim Burton feel to it, I thought, you know what? He's coming back to direct a Beetlejuice sequel. A lot of the cast members he's worked with in the past, numerous times, are coming back to star. You know, Winona Ryder, who Tim Burton worked with in the first Beetlejuice, and in Edward Scissorhands, she's coming back. You know, she's returning as Lydia Gate. I think that's what the character's name is. Please don't come at me if I got it wrong. In this Beetlejuice sequel, you also have Michael Keaton, you know, returning as Beetlejuice, who Tim Burton worked with in the first Beetlejuice, and also in the Batman movies, and I think Michael Keaton was in his Dumbo film. You've got Catherine O'Hara in here, who was also in the first Beetlejuice, like I said already, and was also one of the voices in Tim Burton's Frankenweenie. I do apologise if I got that incorrect because I haven't seen that movie. But, so you got them coming back. You've got, some people who have worked with Tim Burton in the past coming back to work with him. And you also have some new cast members, which, sounded like they all really wanted to be in the movie. Like Jenna Ortega, who actually just worked with Tim Burton on the Wednesday TV series. She's coming into this movie, which sounded perfect. She looked like she was the perfect fit in the trailer for this film. You had Monica Bellucci coming into this film, which I thought was a very interesting choice. And then I soon realised why she was in this movie, because she's dating Tim Burton at the moment, which makes a lot of sense. Because Helena Bonham Carter, who was in a lot of Tim Burton's previous movies, she was married to Tim Burton for a while, which is why she was in those films. But anyway, it makes total sense why Monica Bellucci's in this movie, but at the time, I didn't know that when I first heard that she was cast in this movie. I didn't know she was dating Tim Burton. And I thought, oh, what a very interesting choice. And you got Willem Dafoe, the Green Goblin himself, is also in this film, alongside Justin Theroux, who I haven't seen in much. So, the cast had me very interested. And the trailers came out, and they looked like the trailers made this film look like it was Tim Burton back on form, and that's what I was hoping for. I was hoping to get that classic Tim Burton feel back, the Tim Burton feel we had in the first Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, Big Fish, and Batman Returns, and his Sweeney Todd movie. I was hoping to have that feel back in this movie, and I was hoping just to have a really, really good time, because I don't consider the first Beetlejuice movie to be a masterpiece. I just think it's a wildly entertaining, fun ride, and I was really hoping to get the same from this movie. But I was also cautiously optimistic, because Tim Burton, at least in my opinion, and I know people disagree here, I know there's some people out there who love his Charlie and the Chocolate Factory remake, and actually really enjoyed his Dumbo remake and his Alice in Wonderland remake. But for my money, Tim Burton hasn't made a good movie since 2005 with Big Fish. So I was very wary. Hoping for the best, but very wary. But I was very, very excited to see this movie, because I'm a big Beetlejuice fan, and I wanted to see how the story continued. So that is why I went to go and see the film early today. Honestly, I just got back from the cinema, and after seeing the movie early today, here are my thoughts on it. Here are my thoughts on Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Honestly, I had a great time with this film, and I thought it was really good. I've heard some people complaining about it. I really need to stay away from other people's reviews and other people's reactions, because it does sometimes taint my opinion, or it taints my viewing experience. Like, I'm thinking, what did they not get here? I don't understand what that review saw here, that reviewer saw here, and things like that. So I need to stay away from that in the future. But I had heard prior to watching this movie that people had big complaints about it. And I was watching this film and I was thinking, it's Beetlejuice. This is what I expected and what I hoped for in a Beetlejuice sequel, and in all the right ways. It felt like it was part of the Beetlejuice world. The characters all felt true to the original. The new characters felt like they fit in this world perfectly, and it had that classic Tim Burton feel that I wanted from this movie. Now, I'm not saying the film's perfect by any means. I don't think the first Beetlejuice movie is perfect, and I do think this film has some problems. There's some parts here and there which I felt could have been tightened up, and there were some unnecessary sections. Like, I'm not really sure what the point of Monica Bellucci or Willem Dafoe's characters were, but they were still enjoyable to watch. Like, they were unnecessary in the movie. So the critical part of me is going, yeah, they were unnecessary, they shouldn't be in the film. But the non-critical side of me is going, yeah, I still enjoy watching them though. They're not necessary to the film, but they're still enjoyable to watch. But there are unnecessary parts of the movie, and there are emotional beats which I wish really stuck the landing more. There's a couple of moments where it's like, okay, this is working on an emotional level, but it's not working on quite the emotional level that I would have liked it to. It's not working on the same emotional level that, say, Edward Scissorhands does, or say that Big Fish does. You know what I mean? Like, when you watch Edward Scissorhands or Big Fish, there are emotional moments which almost going to make you cry. You really get nothing from that. You don't get that from the emotional moments in this movie. And sure, you don't get that from the emotional moments in the first Beetlejuice as well. But I actually think this film has more of an emotional core than the first Beetlejuice. I'm not saying it's a better movie than the first Beetlejuice. I'm just saying it has more of an emotional core. Although I would have liked that emotion. I would have liked that emotion to be felt more in certain scenes. Like, there's one scene in particular. I was about to spoil some of that, but I won't do because, it's a big spoil for the film. But there's one scene in particular. It's like, God, if you just did a little bit more and spent a bit more time in the scene, this could have been far more emotional than I found it to be. And plus, the ending to this film didn't totally work for me. I didn't think it was a terrible ending, but I sat there in the end going, okay, where's this going? I don't have a clue where this is going. And then I saw where it ended up and I was like, okay, I suppose that's the way you could end it. You kind of leaving it open, so you could do a threequel if you wanted to, but I don't know. I felt that the ending could have been better. However, with that all being said, I had a great time with this film, and I can get away from all those problems because I had a great time with the movie. I went into cinema not feeling that well, because I woke up feeling quite ill this morning. I also went into cinema in a bit of a bad mood, because I've got things in my mind right now, and I came out of the cinema with a spring in my step. I found it really entertaining, and it had humour in there, which worked for me. Now, not all the humour works in the film, but more of the humour works in this movie than I really expected it to, and I was laughing out loud in the cinema, as was my brother who I was watching this with. I feel weird about laughing out loud in the cinema. The cinema I was in earlier today was quite full, and because of that, when the cinema's quite full, I often feel, self-conscious about laughing, but I didn't in this movie because I got so into it. And it has all these plot lines which all come together in a way in the final act, which is very chaotic. The big finale of the movie is very chaotic, but I loved that. I loved how chaotic it got. I was like, yes, this is what I want. This is the craziness that I want from a Beetlejuice sequel. It's got the craziness and creativity of the first Beetlejuice movie, but ramped up, because this movie does have that creativity in there. It very much feels like a Tim Burton movie, as I've already said, and I mean that in the best way possible. This feels like Tim Burton getting his mojo back, getting back to the director we fell in love with all of his strange wonder, all of his, his strange magical feels that he gives you in such movies as the first Beetlejuice, Big Fish, Edward Scissorhands, and even Batman Returns to a degree, you know what I mean? It feels like Tim Burton going back and giving you that strange wonder that we loved so much from those films, because there was a bit of strange wonder in this movie, which I really didn't expect. There was one sequence where I was going, oh my god, I can't believe I'm getting those same Tim Burton feels that I got all the way back when I watched, films like Big Fish and Beetlejuice for the first time, again here. I really didn't expect that. And like I said before, it feels like he's getting his mojo back. Now, I'm not going to say this is Tim Burton back to form. I'm not going to say that for certain, because for all we know, the next movie he directs, which I think is meant to be a remake of Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, and look how many times he's directed remakes in the past and haven't really worked. So for all we know, the next movie he makes won't work out that well, and will feel like he's phoning it in all over again. But here, it feels like he's back to form, he's making the movie he wants to make, and he's having a great time doing it. He feels like he's making a movie with his friends, but in the best way. Like, everyone on screen feels like they want to be there. You know, nobody's phoning it in their performances. Michael Keaton doesn't miss a beat as Beetlejuice. He's back in this movie, and as soon as he was on screen, I was like, that's Beetlejuice. I couldn't even see Michael Keaton. I feel the same way when I watch the first Beetlejuice. You know, when I rewatch it, I don't see Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice, and I felt the same way here. Winona Ryder doesn't meet a beat as Lydia Gates, and Jenna Ortega perfectly fits into this world. It almost feels like she was a part of the first film, but we never saw her. And as soon as we see in this movie, it's like, oh yeah, completely a believer as Lady Gates' daughter. And Justin Theroux, he works in this movie. He works great. I haven't really seen Justin Theroux in anything. And I'm watching this movie going, yeah, perfectly fits into this. Catherine O'Hara is wonderful in this film. She's wonderfully hilarious. There was quite a few moments where I was laughing out loud with at her in the movie, and in the way you want, in the way you should be doing in this film. Willem Dafoe is brilliant. I love Willem Dafoe in this film. His character isn't necessary, you know, but I love him in this movie because it feels like he's having fun. And you don't often get to see Willem Dafoe have fun in films. He often plays the bad guy, the big bad guy, and he's playing it quite gruff a lot of the time. And he's often in, you know, independent films as well, which have a very serious tone and aren't always the funnest to watch. And he feels like he's having a blast with the character he's playing, and I had a blast watching it. And Monica Bellucci also fit into the movie perfectly in the role she was playing. Those are with Monica. I'm not going to say much. But with Monica Bellucci's character, there was a touch of Addams Family there, and it was like, okay, I can see where Tim Burton's work on the Wednesday TV series is coming into influence. Is influence the right word to use there? But it's coming into practice. Let's say that, shall we? It's coming into practice with her character. And going back onto that whole Tim Burton feel, this movie has that stop motion animation that people have come to love from Tim Burton's work in films like Night Before Christmas, which, although isn't a Tim Burton directed film, was still produced by him, and he was still very much involved in that movie. And it has that stop motion animation that you get in Night Before Christmas, or that you got in The Corpse Bride or Frankenweenie, you know, those kind of movies. It got that in this one. I didn't really expect to see that, but I thought it fit perfectly. It didn't feel out of place. And all the nods to his previous movies I loved. And I love the set design. I love the Danny Elfman musical score. You know, Danny Elfman has done the musical score to almost all of Tim Burton's movies, and it worked very well here. I will say, I wish the musical score had a couple of new themes in there, because it very much feels like it's reusing the same themes from the first Beetlejuice movie, but I still think it worked very well, and it adds to that strange wonder that you get in the best Tim Burton movies. I had a great time in this film. I had a far better time watching this movie than I was expecting to have. It's not perfect, and it does have its problems, but so does the first Beetlejuice. You know, people who say the first Beetlejuice is a masterpiece and doesn't have any problems, I do sometimes think they look at that film, you know, with rose-tinted glasses, and they look back on that film as well. Maybe they watched the film at a young age, and they look back on the film in that way, and everybody does that. Everybody has that film you watch at a young age and they go, oh yeah, I love that movie. Then when you rewatch it now, you actually realise it's got a lot of big problems. And I felt that a little bit with when I rewatched the first Beetlejuice last week. And this movie does have big problems, but it's so wildly entertaining to watch. It felt like a Beetlejuice movie in my opinion, and that was what I was hoping for. It felt like a Tim Burton movie, and it felt like Tim Burton at his best at times, which is also what I was hoping for. Again, I'm not saying this is one of Tim Burton's best movies, and I'm not even saying it's as good as the first Beetlejuice, but it did what I hoped it would. It gave me a very enjoyable cinematic experience, and I laughed. I got a little bit freaked out at times, which is what you want from a film like this, because it does have its scary moments and even its gory moments here and there. It had that strange, quirky comedy about death that I was hoping was going to be in this movie. It had that German expressionist-inspired set design. You felt the strange wonder of Tim Burton that you also want in a film like this. And so, yeah, for that reason, I really, really enjoyed Beetlejuice, and that's why I'm also going to say that the movie is a 7.5 out of 10 from me. Now, the reason I'm giving this film a 7.5 out of 10 is because I think it's a solid movie. Any movie I think it's solid, really enjoyable, passes the time, and does it in a very fun way. I give a 7.5 out of 10. No lower, no higher. That's just the way I review movies. I don't know why I said it like that, but that's what happens when I think a film is solidly enjoyable. That's when I give it a 7.5 out of 10, and that's what I was hoping to give this film. I think it was really good. Like, I've heard some people being a bit negative about it. I don't really get why. If Tim Burton continues making movies like this, I'm all for it. Genuinely. I mean, again, I'm not saying it's his best work, but it feels like a Tim Burton movie. It feels like it's got a mojo back. I feel like I had so much fun making it. And one last thing, I loved the pacing of the film. Now, this won't be a big issue for many people, but I loved the pacing because it isn't a film which feels rushed, nor does it feel too slow. It feels like it's paced the right way. It's paced in a very similar way to the first Beetlejuice movie. Nothing's rushed and nothing's too slow. It's just the right tempo. You know what I mean? Yeah, I love the pacing. The point I'm making in this podcast today is I had a great time with Beetlejuice. If you're a fan of the first film, I think you'll really enjoy this one. And if you're not a fan of the first film, then don't go watch it. It's not going to be for everybody. I don't think any Tim Burton movies are, but it worked for me in the ways I wanted it to. It has that weird wonder, that strange wonder that the best Tim Burton movies had, that the best Tim Burton movies have. And it's funny, it's wacky, it's freaky, and it's what you want a Beetlejuice movie to be. It's really, really good. And yeah, definitely worth a watch. I'm so glad that a Beetlejuice sequel's good, because I was worried that it wouldn't be. But look, I've seen the movie, and I thought it was really good, which I thought it was really good and satisfying enough as a Beetlejuice sequel. And so, all in all, as already said, and as I'm going to say once more in this podcast today, Beetlejuice is a 7.5 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen Beetlejuice, then please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. Maybe you didn't like the film and you disagree with everything I said, or maybe you felt similar to me. Whatever your thoughts are on Beetlejuice, please let me know in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this podcast. I look forward to many more podcasts coming very, very soon on this channel. As already said, thank you guys for watching or listening to this podcast. And, I suppose this is it. So I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.